Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on J Slay, Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. Guys, I'm excited about today's show. We've got a personal friend of mine and a friend of the show. Matt Cubbler's been on this thing maybe 5 times. I think it's the 5th time. And we originally, for those of you that don't know, we met through Instagram when I was, putting some things out there, questioning narratives about our government's military industrial complex and 9/11 and things that, even some things about the Osama bin Laden raid. Eventually, Rob O'Neill, the alleged killer of Osama bin Laden, reached out to me and said, "Hey, you may be right about a lot of things. I really like watching your stuff. But on this one thing, you're wrong. I was there. I took the shot." And immediately, and he said that publicly, and Matt Cubbler wrote back publicly and said, "Yeah, you killed Osama bin Laden about as much as I shot JFK." And so I had to reach out, and figure out, is this guy legit? Like, does he know stuff? And yes, he did know quite a bit. Matt Cubbler is a longtime law enforcement officer, I believe 30 years, been a Federal Air Marshal, been a private investigator, and a human behavior analysis expert. And so I'm excited to have him back on the show today. We're going to get into really covering the bases of what we talked about in our 3 shows with Rob O'Neill. And I kind of forgot to say that. Rob agreed to come on the show with us. It was friendly. We didn't end up believing his version of the story. And that's the thing too, guys. There's been traction gained among fans of special teams. Tier 1 special teams operators themselves are questioning his narrative. And Rob has done a lot of kind of flip-flopping, going back and forth from, hey, this is definitely absolutely what happened, to kind of getting soft on, well, it was more of a team effort. Here's what may have been what happened. And then kind of back now to standing strong on his original version of events. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Matt Cubbler. Thanks for coming back on, brother.
What's up, bro? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm especially good because more than you helping me maybe expose deception and, maybe unlocking some of the hidden secrets of the special teams, you saved me from getting scammed out of $1,800 in cash the other day.
Yeah.
What a nutty story. I told you I was like ashamed that I actually got pulled in by that. But yeah, if anybody ever calls you and says they're from, the local law enforcement with a county and they want to have you do something called a mobile transport, and you need to pull money out to put it in a Coinstar machine, and I didn't do it, but only because I called you, because this guy had me hoodwinked, dude.
Listen, you're way more aware people to that kind of stuff fall for that kind of stuff. People that know about the scams will fall for it, depending on the delivery of the person who's perpetrating the scam. Really, it comes down to how believable the person is on the phone. And there are times when you hear you're in the South, you hear a Southern accent, you have like all the pieces fit. They're saying the right words. They're saying the right names of the places. So they must know, it's always, if they're asking you, first of all, no law enforcement officer is ever going to ask you to give money. Yeah. They're just not. There's never going to be an opportunity where they go do this, get this amount of money and pay it here and do that. And then you're good. That's just, the process doesn't work that way anywhere in the United States. So
yeah, he was pretty, on certain things he sounded retarded, but on other things, like he was like, "Are you still at 4?" He gave my address to me and all this and said, "Listen, like, you signed this document saying that you would attend this court case, court number this, as a pre-jury selection sort of a thing." So there's all these big words being thrown around. And then he said, you're guilty of 3 crimes. He listed what they were. I mean, it was a bunch of just legal jargon. But it sounded like what it would be called for missing your court date. And he was like, "Listen, if you're claiming that this didn't happen, would you be willing to do a handwriting analysis? You can come right up here to the courthouse. We'll do the handwriting analysis." And I'm kind of like, surely this isn't real. And I was sitting right here. About 10 minutes into the conversation, I start recording it. And he's like, "Listen, this is called a mobile escort. We're giving you a chance right now you'll be made whole. You have to pay the money. Then you're going to come to the courthouse. You'll sign some documents saying like, yes, you made a mistake, whatever. And we will give you your money back," which sounds so stupid. But he was like, "I'm from the Murfreesboro Police Department in Rutherford County," which is the county I grew up in, the neighboring county of this one. I know a couple law enforcement officers there. And I said, "Well, before I go any further, I'm going to use my other phone and call them." And he was like, "Yeah, go right ahead." And I tried calling one and I mentioned his name. He's like, "Yeah, I know Steven." And and I'm like, I guess this is legit, but like the last thing was when I went to that screen on the Coinstar and it said, beware of the scam from law enforcement. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, if you hang up the phone right now, we're sending a unit to your location to pick you up, handcuff you, and bring you to jail. And it's like, that's when I called you. Within 5 seconds, I like put you kind of on because I had two phones. I put you guys together, and I've got all this recorded, by the way. So I'm going to have to put it out there as a PSA.
You should. It's listen, I've heard them all. From they record somebody's voice or a girl that sounds like a young kid and it's like, help, I'm in jail, or help, I'm in a hospital, need to send money. Like there's so many creative ways they go about getting. And a lot of times it's seniors and who, grandmom, I'm stuck, I'm in jail, I need $5,000 to get out, and they send $5,000, and it's just
normally old people and not people that have a
and
podcast about exposing deception.
Old people and Jeremy Sladen.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Well, he did a rather good job with his whole scam there. But so let's get to the point, man. So Rob came on the show 3 times. We know he's mad at us right now. I don't know if he texted you, but he texted me, and he was he wrote me and he said, here you guys are talking, which we weren't really talking shit. You went on 1 or 2 other shows and just gave your take on things. I did kind of a synopsis show about our 3 shows, which I took some, and it wasn't really comparing and contrasting things that he had said as much as maybe some of his teammates. And I put I kind of did a conglomeration of those media clips. And then I gave splices of our show put together in a shorter form so people could watch it in 1 hour instead of, maybe 2+ hours. I think that was about our first show. Where am I going with that though?
Rob was angry.
What's that?
So just that Rob's not happy.
Yeah. Yes, he was not happy. He wrote back, you brought me on your show just to talk shit, like I'm so disappointed in you both. And I was like, I sent him a voice note back almost immediately because I wanted to keep it above board, not let it get dirty, and just say, hey man, the agreement was you came on the show. We like you. It's nothing about that. We just, on this story, the evidence just isn't adding up on this story. And I said,
and we told him that though. We told him that's what was going to, the type of show it was going to be, was I had questions about what he said.
I think ultimately he had told me beforehand when we talked on the phone in a very friendly conversation before the very first show. And I flat out asked him, I said, is any conservative, somebody with my values that would vote the same way as you in politics, has any of them ever questioned you or grilled you on these things? He said, no, never. And I said, well, Rob, I really respect the fact that you're willing to come on. And he said, no, man, it's great. It's great. He's like, I was there. And I truly think he just thought that first of all, he didn't know who you were and maybe the depth of knowledge that you had. And I encourage everybody to go back and watch there's links in the description to these original shows. So if you want the complete context, please click on those links because you'll have all of it there. But I think he really thought he was just going to win us over.
And to be honest, he's a likable guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he certainly has a guy you want to sit around and hang, shoot the shit with, have a drink with, play pool with, shoot darts, whatever. Like, he's a backyard campfire kind of guy. And I don't personally dislike Rob O'Neill. I don't respect what he's done with this narrative and how he's monetized it and is continuing to make money off of what I believe to be as a lie, but it still doesn't change the fact that he's probably a really nice guy to hang out with. And you even mentioned it to me. You're like, listen, after the second one, you're like, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm starting to like the guy. and it's tough to be critical of somebody you like. And that's the hardest part. And again, I don't have skin in the game with Rob O'Neill. I don't, and I told this recently, for anybody who this is the first time you're hearing me, I have been investigating the death of Joe Price, commander of SEAL Team 4, who died in 2012, was a high school buddy of mine. That's the only thing within the SEALs that I'm actually investigating. I'm not going after Rob O'Neill. I'm not going after Jocko Willink. That's not the target of any investigation that I'm doing. I'm only investigating Joe Price. But over the last 7 years, I've gotten zero headway into uncovering the truth. I know what happened, but getting the truth to come out has been a struggle.
Yeah.
So I was given this opportunity by Jeremy to talk to Rob O'Neill and have a debate, more or less, about what happened on that day, because I was, throughout my experience with Commander Price's death and investigating, I've talked to a lot of SEALs. And a lot of information has been given to me about many different things.
Yeah.
And I was given a lot of information about Rob. And so this was an opportunity I saw to, maybe rattle some cages, maybe get Rob O'Neill to want to help uncover what happened to Job. Maybe just to get enough eyes on Job's and say Job's name enough during that interview to where they would want to know what's going on. So this was more of a possibility of more eyes, more opportunity for Job's case to be exposed. And then it turned into something completely different, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah. And our second show, called SEAL Secrets, that was where Rob, I think, showed a lot of the humanity and stuff, because he didn't know much about Job. And when we talked about Extortion 17, he had his own take on that. But you could see, like, aside from the Osama bin Laden stuff, he makes a good case for being somebody that wants to get to the truth of things. And he definitely was sensitive to your story with Job. And that's when I told you, I was like, man, I'm really starting to like this guy. Are you sure you want to do this? So, and we kept, go ahead.
But the reality, and I'm going to explain before we even go down this road, what my interviewing approach was for him as a police officer, as a human behavior analyst. I can quickly understand the type of personality somebody has, and depending on the type of personality they have will determine how they like to be talked to, and then how, as an investigator, how to elicit information from somebody with that type of personality. Mm-hmm. That's typically how I approach these things. And I did my homework on Rob. I'd seen just about every interview he had ever done, and a lot of my sources had given me information about him as far as the type of person he was and how he likes to ingratiate people into liking him so that they don't ask him hard questions and don't peek behind the curtain. So I kind of had that already in my head.
I tell you this, people would see this if they watch any mainstream or even like the Sean Ryan show. He gets gushed over from pre-interview to during the interview to post-interview. And people are like, oh my gosh, my heart was just racing because I got to be in his presence. And it's like, there's some serious questions here about his narrative that go way back. I mean, old questions. And for no one in the mainstream media to ever ask those, it's pretty weird.
Well, I think it's predetermined. A lot of it is, first of all, when this happened was, midpoint of the war. He's the most wanted man in the world. He's now dead. SEAL Team 6 killed him. Rob O'Neill's the hero. They needed to have a hero to put out, and that's what they created. And Rob was a willing participant, and he became that person and has effectively monopolized that narrative to his gain for the last 10 years since he came public. So, my approach to interviewing him was to get him to talk and to get him to, to ask hard questions, but not to attack him. He's not a guy that if you attack him, he's going to respond well. He's going to shut down. He's going to get defensive, kind of almost like he got with the extortion stuff. You could see he realized that the window of ingratiating us was closing. And so you see a little bit more of Rob's real personality when it comes to being a little bit more defensive about the SEAL community and things that happened. That was more in the third show we did. The second show, he was phenomenal, which, if you think about, I didn't know that he was going to do more than one show. But once I saw that was kind of where it was going, when early on he said, yeah, we should do this again. I'm like, okay, doing it again could be an opportunity to get him to say some things on tape that help my case, which is to get him to admit that there have been corruption, there has been cover-ups and specific incidents.
He did in a big way, honestly. And you would bring up points that he could, and he wasn't like trying to refute you about Job or even about extortion. But he would say, yeah, that's super shady. He's like, I don't have any answers. That's just crazy. So it's like, okay, it's crazy everywhere else except for this raid. And there's some pretty serious questions there. Let me ask you this, and this to me is the most important question for the average viewer that doesn't understand why you would. Now, with the Job piece, I get it. So I should say why me as a host would continue to talk about it. And that's this. if Rob's lying about being the first man to take the shot, because the actual truth is the mystery man named call sign Reds took the shot, or it was some kind of a team effort where there was a lot of shots at the same time. Nobody really knows, but Rob probably wasn't the first. Why then does it matter if it's, okay, this guy didn't take it, but he's lying, versus it's a team effort sort of a thing? What does it matter at this point?
Well, there's two parts to the reason why I care about the truth. Number one is if you're building up a mythical creature known as the Navy SEAL, and there's all of this positive, heroic, worshiping content that's out there between Lone Survivor, American Sniper, Rob's operator book, and Rob's story, and the fact that he is on the speaking circuit. And you create this deflection of truth from truth by having all these hero worshiping moments for the Navy SEAL brand. So that's number one. When something like Joe Price's case is getting zero attention and zero effort put behind it,
is what you're saying there, though. If you've built this for lack of a better word, like beautiful unicorn of the special teams and the SEALs in the eyes of the American people, that when they do something wrong, they get an easy cover up because nobody's going to ask them any hard questions. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Nobody's going to believe it. I mean, even today on stuff that I'm putting out on other stuff, on other podcasts I've been on, I mean, there is so much SEAL worshiper comments on there and hate towards me, which is, I don't care about the hate part, but it's just the blind acceptance of truth that Jocko is truly extreme ownership. Right? Like, he is Batman, and he is the man who is square jawed and talks into his mic in a black and white room.
Well, to be fair, he is square jawed, and he does talk into his mic in a Batman voice.
No doubt. But he's also not that. Like, that's not him. That's a shtick. Like, so the shticks, the lies, the fabrications, the narrative changing, the Hollywoodization of the Navy SEALs makes the truth of things like Joe Price's case hard to bring forward because the light is shining so bright in an opposite direction.
That makes sense.
And then number two is, when someone is monetizing a lie and is being given, not just with his book, but I mean, his own statement, he did up to 300 speaking engagements a year at, $50,000 roughly a pop. That's a lot of eyes, ears, and hearts that are being impacted while he's, ka-chinging to the bank. And I just think it doesn't sit right in my soul when that's happening, when somebody like Joe Price, and again, the only thing I care about is Joe Price. I don't care about any of this other stuff, but this other stuff is the only thing that's opening up opportunities for me to get Joe Price, his case heard. So that's my issue.
Can I throw out a third one and get your take? And my audience has heard me say it, especially in the intros to other shows, but I want to hear, does this impact you at all? Like, and I wrote it down. I personally have only cared about whether this lie is acting as a cornerstone, holding together a potentially much larger conspiracy of the United States government that would go back to 9/11 and then forward to the pullout of Afghanistan, which kind of needed that Usama bin Laden as a central, dark figure that we had to take out. And he got taken out at just the right time, right before Obama's next election. Like, there's all these things that were kind of too perfect. And then McRaven getting rid of all the evidence or sending it to the CIA where it's irrecoverable. And then, and this may not get brought up in the show, so I'll say it now. Rob saying that there are, I hope I'm saying this right, that there are United States senators that have photos of the actual evidence, like in their files, and why won't they just show it? I'm begging them to just show it. It's like, well, then it's not even classified. It's like I just don't understand. All of those parts and pieces don't make sense to me, and it points to something potentially much larger where they needed a front man who was so good he could have his own podcast and go around the country doing, because it's not every day that it's one thing to be a Navy SEAL, to be in that kind of shape and that kind of prime of your life and have that skill set. It's another thing to be able to go and be the front man for an entire, organization of ideas. And he's doing that. So he's like the perfect guy.
Yeah. And I think his star is fading. I think his time has run its course, and just with anything, there's always there's an ending to everything, and I think he's on the back end of his world tour. So, and I think he knows that he doesn't the things that he was. The difference between like him and Jocko is Jocko's got an entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's taken his acclaim through being a SEAL and turned it into something that is multi verticals in his business plan. He's got different verticals of income coming from his plans, and it's him and a couple other SEALs, and he's got other SEALs that have podcasts affiliated with him. And Jocko's more of he's not smarter by any stretch of the imagination intellectually, but he's got whoever his business person is behind him has a much smarter entrepreneurial spirit to branding Jocko as an individual than Rob ever had with what Rob has always just been the guy that killed bin Laden and would go do the circuit. But he never really figured out how to turn that into something bigger than his brand stuff that he sells. His clothing isn't really, it's not a huge hit. It's not like he's a major's not Black Rifle Coffee, right? You know what I'm saying? So, and he could have been pretty simply if he had. I think if he was actually liked by the community, his brand would have been a lot more financially. His was based on effort. So going out and actually putting in the hours of working and being a speaker is how he made his money.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's where his main skill lies.
That's his thing.
Before we get too far down the road, man, I want to jump in because I don't want to hit the time wall here. Why don't you take it away, brother? Because I told you we've got all these clips lined up to compare contrast. So you tell me where to go, and that's what we'll do. So
what I wanted to, because not everybody's going to put in the work to look at this stuff. So it's good enough if they watch our stuff. But Rob came out in, I think it was November-ish of 2014 as publicly as the man who says he killed bin Laden. And throughout the years, if you see the early on stuff, which I'm going to show clips of, he's a little bit more, his personality hasn't come out yet in these interviews. You see little glimpses of who he is, but his relaxation in telling the story, his confidence in the story isn't there yet. So he's very much like he's being questioned by Congress in a lot of the early ones. So if you show a little bit of the Fox 2014 one and the CNN 2014 one, you can kind of see, and this is going to be, we're going to talk more or less about the actual, when they're in the building, probably from like the Khalid getting shot between the first and second floor and then going up to the third floor for bin Laden. So show the Fox one first.
Got it.
This is all happening very rapidly.
I remember there was a girl in our room, a little girl, crying, and I had a guy, I was sort of holding down, I had a guy take my spot. I went and grabbed her, walked her across a hallway to find a woman to give the girl to.
So you'll notice he said everybody but the first man and me went and did work. Yeah. And you'll see when we share what he said on our show, there's a stark difference there.
Because even in the heat of something that important, that moment, we're the good guys, and we don't want her to be any more afraid than she needs to be because she has nothing to do with this. So people are like going around making sure kids are huddled with parents. And the hallway is a barricade to a door, and it's obvious that door is going to go up the stairs.
A steel door locked guarding a staircase that goes up to the second floor. They blew that door and began making their way up a narrow staircase to the second story.
They're blowing this door, they finally open it, and then we start going up the stairs. I was way in the back, and so I'm kind of just walking up the stairs, and I'm watching. And what the analyst said was that you're probably going to run into Khalid bin Laden on the stairs, and if you do, that's the last line of defense. The guy in front was sort of separated by a banister between him and Khalid, and he just whispered to him. Whispered his name, and he whispered, "Come here," in Arabic, and then "come here" in Pashto. And that confused Khalid because there wasn't a lot of yelling and screaming and go, go, go. And Khalid, he was armed, and he kind of turned over and he peeped his head over and said, "What?" And he, armed, shoot him. So he shot him. And that was just because of this spot-on intelligence by the CIA, telling us where this person will be here. We keep rolling up the stairs. Once we got to the second floor, all the guys except the first guy separated.
There were women and children on that floor, so as the men
So you'll notice he said everybody but the first man and me went and did work.
Yep.
And you'll see when we share what he said on our show, there's a stark difference there. Pull up that CNN one, and I want to see that same period of time. You can just sort of see they're within months of each other, the similarities in the story.
So you start on the first floor, make your way up to the third?
We started on the first floor. They cleared that. There was, at the end of a long hallway on the first floor, was a barricaded door, which is another sign that someone important is inside. The guys ahead of me, they used their methods of entry, a couple different attempts, and they opened it. And then we started going up the stairs from the first floor to the second floor. On the way up, the analyst had told us we would run into Khalid bin Laden, Osama bin Laden's son, and she said if we see him, that he's last line of defense. Well, if he's armed, and he was armed, and so he was. We eliminated the threat there. Continued up to the second floor, and when I was about 8 guys, the 8th guy back maybe. Once we got to the second floor, the guys in front of me, all except for the one man, started to clear the threats on the second floor. We're going to secure that floor until we move up. So I moved my way up to the second position behind the first man, and he was pointing up the stairs to the third floor. And there was a curtain on the top of the floor, and there was some movement behind it with unknown silhouettes. He was getting concerned that they would have explosives or putting on vests or they're rigging something, and he was letting me know, not me know, letting the guy behind him know that it just turned out to be me, that there was a threat at the top of the stairs and we need to go now. I wanted more people, but he was spot on, so I gave him a squeeze on his shoulder. He went up, I went up behind him. We went through the curtain. The threats, the unknowns turned out to be some females. He sort of grabbed onto them and he pushed them a little bit down the hallway, falling on them to absorb the blast that he knew was going to happen. So he gave his life so the guy behind him could get a shot. From there, when he pushed the women, I turned to the right into a doorway, and the doorway led to a bedroom, and in the bedroom was Osama bin Laden, a matter of feet in front of me. And he had his hands on his wife's shoulders. He was not surrendering. He was sort of moving, and just based on the level of threat of him not surrendering and the likelihood of him having a vest, I engaged him. I shot him twice in the head. He fell on the floor. I shot him one more time, and I killed him.
In that brief moment you had with him, did you get a sense of him at all? Was it like, this is the world's most evil man, or was it, this is a coward, this is just another guy? What did it feel like?
The sense was a recognition of, first of all, an idea of him, and then he's a threat. And then I had to shoot him. And it wasn't the first time I'd done that on a target before. You know, this wasn't the first target I'd been on. And at that point, it was a target. I recognized the threat. I recognized the individual we were after, which was Osama bin Laden, and I engaged.
A sniper friend of mine wants to ask you, what did it feel like?
So you can see that one's very very similar to the other one with less. He was a little bit more relaxed talking with Fox News than he was CNN.
Yeah.
My gut says Fox is a more ideologically friendly news or agency versus CNN. That might have added to his relaxation or lack thereof. If you remember, and we'll show this in our video, a lot of what he said going in on ours and on many other videos later on, as he became more polished in his delivering, we'll see some of those. He talked about thought the house was rigged with explosives, and that there was a lot of conversation about, I'm going to die today, so I'm going on. This is a one-way mission, a suicide mission. Everyone is worried about bombs hanging in the ceiling, and everybody's got a vest, and like everything was bomb related, which is very different from his early interviews. He doesn't speak on the bomb stuff really at all, except for in this one where he thought that maybe the women at the top of the stairs had suicide vests. But that's really the only time he talked about that. Pull up the, let me see here. Pull up the Ed Milet one from 2018.
House.
Yes.
And we're like looking around for bombs and stuff. When's it going to blow up?
Yes.
But I was so impressed. My guys were so cool. No one cared about the bombs. They're doing their job. And I remember thinking how cool they are, and then just thinking slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Watch these guys work. And as I'm thinking this, I ducked into a room to look down the hallway, because don't stand in the hallway. They'll shoot down the hallway. The guy next to me said, helicopter crashed. And now I'm thinking, we had 2 big helicopters, 2 Chinooks, 45 minutes behind us, full of other SEALs, in case we need to, whatever.
Yep.
So I'm assuming they crashed. They got shot down because they're not stealth helicopters. So I said, what helicopter crashed? And he goes, bro, our helicopter crashed in the front yard. You walked right past it.
Wow.
And as I'm processing this, one of our snipers from my helicopter, he was running around the entire compound to keep a perimeter. He had a dog with him and a dog handler. And he got to that famous spot where the tail is hanging over.
Yes.
And he came over the radio, and he didn't know it crashed. And he said, guys, be on alert. They are definitely ready for us. They have a training mock-up of our super secret helicopter in the front yard. And there's a pause.
No way.
And the boss goes,
there for 1 second.
no, you jackass, that's ours. We crashed.
No.
Pause there real quick. That's the kind of stuff that Rob loves. The minute he has engaged audience where it's like, oh my God, go on, please tell me more, the more Hollywood Rob comes out. All right, you can play. All right.
And he comes over and goes, yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
My God.
And I'm in the house like, what are we talking about
That's
right
crazy.
now?
And so you're hearing this, you're looking down this hallway.
Yeah.
Probably at the end of that hallway somewhere is Osama bin Laden,
Down the
right?
hallway is going to be a stairwell.
A stairwell.
And
What's your heart rate right now?
You're fine. We're good.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we've been in...
because of your preparation?
Well, yeah, we've been in so many fights before. It's like you didn't really get adrenaline. You're more aware, but it's just more exciting. I'm not scared.
Okay.
At this point, but there's a series of emotions that happen right here because the female.
So I just want to throw in my 2 cents for him to have just said that about excited, kind of like he's pumped up. But then on the other hand, like we know we're going to die today, which he's not said that yet. But in our interview, he said it many times.
Yep.
Those two things, even if you're a Navy SEAL, don't mix in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. And his nonchalantness, I'm Billy Badass Cool Guy is a theme that you'll see for pretty much mid 2017 till now. Is the Hollywood version of Rob O'Neill is usually the one that's giving the interview.
Right. Okay, I'll keep going.
Who found bin Laden said, I don't know what the inside of the house looks like, but you will find some stairs. And when you find the stairs, you will run into Khalid bin Laden, who's 20 years old, his son.
Yeah.
And here's how cool she was. She said, that will be the last line of defense. If you eliminate that threat, you will get a shot at the big guy.
All right,
That's
pause
awesome.
there.
Okay.
So
remember in the first 2 interviews, he said nothing about that. There is an interview before this where he mentions that he does say the last line of defense part, but nowhere is this big guy. You're going to meet the big guy. That started to come in around this time period, the 2017-18 time period, is when his theatrical part of this comes into play.
Could what if somebody says, well, he's become a better storyteller? Like it.
Oh yeah, well he's just become way more polished. I mean, there's no doubt when you become confident in your story and confident that you're not going to get pushback, you can start to add in filler things like this that make it a little bit more Hollywood scriptish.
Okay,
that's kind of what I see.
We got in through the door. They breached it. We're going up the stairs, and I'm about eight guys back. So I'm still in the back. They saw Khalid. He was armed, and he ducked behind a banister.
Okay.
Now it's dark. It's very quiet. We don't talk to each other. And there's a guy up front, the point man. And normally in an urban environment, in a house, fighting upstairs, I'm going to grab all the guys back and let like 2 or 3 handle it. Because if they chuck a grenade, they come down.
Right.
Don't fight up. And but now I'm like, I'm going to die anyway, and I gotta watch this. I got to see how is he going to pin the thing? Was he going to run at him? And we're just sitting there, and he whispered to Khalid. He said, "Khalid, come here. Khalid, come here." In 2 different languages. He knew "come here" in Urdu and Arabic.
Is that why he was where he was?
No, he just was that smart of an operator.
Wow.
And that confused Khalid. So Khalid leaned his head over to ask what, and he shot him.
Oh my gosh.
I never would have thought of that. That was brilliant.
My gosh, that's brilliant.
That was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life up until about a minute
what's
later.
about to happen, right?
So we go up the stairs, stepped over Khalid, and then we got to the 2nd floor, and then there's a final stairwell going up. The point man stayed there staring. He's gonna keep security, and other guys are going to clear the 2nd floor because you don't want to move past it. Clear that, and then that's everyone in front of me, and I'm the last guy. I ended up what we call the 2-man. So the 1 man's there, I'm the 2-man, and that's when I put my hand on his shoulder because his job is to look forward, my job is to look behind us. And when we have enough guys, I will squeeze you so you know without looking it's time to go. But it's just us.
Wow.
We're out of guys. We don't have enough guys in the house this big. And he started talking. He's like, hey, we got to go. We got to get up there because there's a curtain at the top of the stairs, and he's seeing people moving behind it. They've got to be suicide bombers. Maybe we can beat him. Maybe we can beat him. So he's convincing me we got to go. And finally, and I don't know what he was thinking. He's just a complete badass. But I wasn't thinking bravery. I'm thinking, all right, we're going to get blown up now, and I'm tired of thinking about it. Let's get it over with. And so I squeezed him. Went up the stairs.
Let's go.
Let's go. Him and me.
If you can tell that he is, so far in 3 videos, very certain on who the point man was. Like where the point man was and the responsibility that person had. And there's no question about who that person is. Let's pull up. It's Hollywood, and you're going to see how the Rob O'Neill narrative falls apart when you watch our show. So let's cue that up.
Okay.
They're going to get out. My team's going to the roof, right? We're going to fast rope onto the roof, jump to the balcony, and we're going to hit them this way. And I thought we're going to get in a shootout like right through the window. I was actually calling my team the Martyrs Brigade because this is going to be an houseborne IED, and we're going to die as soon as we get on the rooftop. So
as you're talking, Rob, can you see how I changed the picture to this image?
I got you.
Is that fairly accurate to what you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's the security gate. And that's the one we came in through when they opened it. And then just right off of that, there was another gate really close to get you into that side yard. And I don't really remember. There was an entrance because I walked around to the front of the house, went in that on the first floor, the front of the house. It says the house that says Bin Laden's bedroom main building. That's I went to the bottom of that floor. And we already had probably there might have been 6 or 8 dudes inside the house already, and they were dealing obviously with the families that were still there, trying to get the women and children together and just hold security there. And then I had 2 guys in front of me breaching on the far wall. So as we walked in from the south up to the north side of the building, that's where a wall was. It was barricaded. They were working the breaching problem there, and I basically was standing there looking for thermal barrack charges hanging from the ceiling because this house is coming down. Like it's going to blow up. And didn't happen. We got to the stairs. The woman that found Bin Laden said we would run into Khalid Bin Laden, which we did. I was still back looking up, and the point man just tricked him. He said, Khalid, come here, in 2 different languages, confused Khalid. He was armed, popped out, he blasted him, then we went to the second floor. Everyone except the point man in front of me started clearing left and right because you don't want to move to another floor without clearing the one you're on, for obvious reasons, and then they went left and right. That put me at 2-man, and so as 2-man, I've got my hand on the shoulder of the guy in front of me. His job is to look forward with his gun pointing that way at the threat. My job as 2-man is to look backward, and I'm waiting for more guys. And when I get enough, I wanted 4, but I would take 2 to go up the last set of stairs. I squeeze him on the shoulder, and he goes, and he just started talking. He didn't know it was me, but he knew it was someone. He said, "Hey, we got to go. We got to get up these stairs." And I remember. It wasn't bravery on my part. I was like, okay, Bin Laden's going to be up there. He's definitely going to blow himself up, and I'm just tired of thinking of it. So I squeezed him on the shoulder, and he went up. And there's a curtain at the top of the stairs. He assumed there were suicide bombers behind it. When he moved the curtain, there was, I think, two girls there. He assumed they were bombers, so he moved them and kind of jumped on them to absorb the blast. And how this dude doesn't have a Medal of Honor, I'll never know. And like I said before, a dude in front of you goes left, you go right. I turn right. There's Bin Laden standing there. Taller than I thought he'd be.
That's once the curtain is open.
Well, the curtain was open. It was in front, and we went through it, and then to the right. Immediately to the right was another doorway to his bedroom, and he was like almost in the doorway. He was standing in front of a mall, and the way he was maneuvering was, I assumed, suicide vest, and it was a quick. I looked at him for maybe a second, and again with the conspiracies, people say, well, why'd you shoot him in the faces? You're supposed to ID him. And anyone that says that's never dealt with a suicide bomber, I have. And they blow up really fucking fast. And all they got to do is put 2 leads together that they put on their wrists, and everything blows up. And the way to stop him is shoot him ideally in the mouth, hit him in the pons medulla. But I shot him right around here twice, and then once more on the ground. Just because people don't die as fast in real life as they do in movies, and I do not want him to blow up. So I shot him there, and then after that, I moved a mall, and his 2-year-old son was standing there. And this is the humanity of missions like this. It's not a video game. As a father, I looked at this 2-year-old kid, and my first thought was, this poor kid has nothing to do with this. And so I moved him out of the way, moved them all back to the bedroom. and kind of gathering my thoughts. And other guys were coming in the room, and I had a dude, actually the dude from downstairs that shot the two. He came up to me and he said, "Hey, you good?" And I said, "What do we do now?" And he said, "Now we find the computers. We do this every night." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm back." And I said, "Holy shit." And he goes, "Yeah, you just killed Osama bin Laden. Your life just changed. Now get to work."
So then we get to when I'm interviewing anybody at a crime scene, and there's always witnesses. Somebody's got to, if they want to get I got something to say. And everybody's got their version of what happened, whatever they see. And I take eyewitness accounts as credibly as I possibly can. But when there are two identical or close to identical accounts with two different people being involved in the same account, that creates a level of doubt in my mind as an investigator, where I have to go deeper and look into how can this possibly be and who is telling the truth, who's not telling the truth. And I'm sure you understand where I'm going with this, with the Matt Bissonette version versus your version. And for me, where I'm struggling and where my brain goes into just on a surface level without ever having had conversations with people prior to having this conversation with you, my only question would have been, how can they both have the same story?
I had the
and
same.
How is it that?
Look, I don't know. We're at the same place, the same, different bird. I mentioned earlier, I don't want to get into other people that were there that, with.
And I'm not asking you to talk from that. I'm not asking you.
I just want to say real quick, that's troublesome to me. First of all, that the two stories are different, but second, that anytime you begin to impede on what could be a problem, like with the story, he gets into that mode of, I don't want to talk about that.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll go back.
I'm going to talk. I'm just.
What I can definitely say is, two guys went up the stairs. I was number two man, and when I turned the corner, bin Laden was standing there, and I shot him 3 times. I get asked this a lot too, and it's I don't want to. Everyone on the ground, I want to be very clear. Everyone on the ground was a very, very solid operator, picked for a reason. And then I told my story, and if you've noticed, I've had 2 books written about it, both approved by everybody, and major players on television, to include Adam McCraven and the Secretary Panetta, said my version of the story. Amal bin Laden said my version of the story, and I don't want to disparage anybody else. Because I've heard everything from bin Laden died as Tim Osman in 2001 to this is a body double to it never happened type shit. And again, I was there. I saw. I'm your best source now, and don't be afraid to use me as a source. But I'm literally telling you exactly what happened. I can't speak for why someone did something else. There's other stuff on the ground too that there were conversations had why certain members would say they did something they didn't do because it didn't happen just in the room I was in. It was somewhere else as well. I'd rather talk about that offline at first because I don't want to talk about other shooters on.
Have you noticed in that interview and in others, both that we did and that other people have done, when it gets to these sensitive topics, he starts to get this like reflux, like
almost like burping. Yeah.
I noticed it multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. So we're back there. Took a little break, and we were trying to find the part where you were questioning Rob about Reds, the point man. So we're gonna get that rolling right now if you're good.
Yeah, please.
All right.
So when the point guy, who is obviously Reds, when he took that shot on Khalid, was that a distance shot? Was it like 4 steps down, from a landing, like 4 steps landing?
Oh no, that's a foot away shot because he kind of came up and over the balcony to look, and I think he got him out of confusion. Because he said something in 2 languages he spoke. So it was just a short shot. Tactically sound as shit. That's a black belt tactics right there.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Yeah. So when then, you squeeze up and you guys go up and you turn to come back up the stairs to the 3rd floor, is that like a 5 or 6 steps? And then, where is, I remember you said that before you got up there, Reds had taken some shots. They heard a couple shots from the number 1 guy, the point guy, Reds. There was a couple shots taken up to the 3rd floor. I'm not getting
to any names. Nobody wants to be named. I just know that there was a guy that was. I think that 2 guys that switched out from point to point, like going to the 2nd floor. There was one, and then they split off. And I think, but I didn't see it. Another guy took point, and that was the point man for me. And there was a shot fired up the stair, up through the.
Let's pause there real quick
before I got there.
Rob was very confident in everything he said up until that point. Although I don't know if he was just having indigestion or not, but
big time.
He was really having issues with that. Every conversation he's had with any interview about going from the second floor to the third floor. So after Khalid, the son of bin Laden, gets shot, peeking over to the banister because he Red used two different languages to say, "Hey, Khalid," or whatever. From that moment on, it's always been the same, that he moves up to the number 2 guy. The only guy that didn't go clear was the number 1 guy, the point man, which is Red. It's always been the same until I question him about, as he's telling his story. So I let him tell the whole story first before I started to break down some of the things he said. And one of the things I wanted to find out was some distances as far as where these shots were fired from. How difficult of a shot would it be? And you got to remember, these are tier 1 operators. This is a point man, who is one of the ballsiest things to be as a point man. You're the first one through a door. You're the first one up a stairway. You've got to be.
Well, Rob
sound.
alluded earlier in the either in this interview or another that he was like, me and Matt Bissonette were both great shots. He goes, but there was one guy who was the best, and that he was talking about Reds. Yeah,
he's talking about Red. So in multiple interviews, ours, one before, and then the one we're going to show at the end, where with the interview we couldn't figure out the timestamp. He talks about Red, the point man, taking a shot. Rob never mentions Red in any of his interviews. It's always the point man, but it's Red. And that's been confirmed through numerous sources, as well as other people who have come out and talked about the raid itself. So when you see Rob, when I say Red takes shots up the stairs, you see him start to go, do I want to confirm Red's identity? And he clearly did not. Or that Red was on the mission, because he's never done that before. So he clearly did not. So his panic move was to then add in something that had never been brought up before, that there was somehow a switcheroo in point man, that somehow from the guy that took the shot, that was, a tactical ninja, the world-class tactics, or whatever Rob calls it, for coming up with the way to get him to peek over his head over the railing, the banister. That guy no longer is the point man in this now new version that Rob comes up with, that there was probably a switch out and he didn't know who that person was. Now, mind you, in every version of the story, the point man was one of the most badass things he's ever seen, when he had him speak 2 different languages to get Khalid to poke his head out, and that he should get a Medal of Honor for diving on the people at the top of the stairs, the women, because they might have had a suicide vest.
Right.
If that person is that badass of a motherfucker, you would think he'd know who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Who else are we going to assign that glory to? Who else should have a Medal of Honor, right? So the fact that in our version, when questioned with Red's name, the Red's call sign, and his position in the stack, that he would then change that, tells me that it's a 100% a fabricated lie, that he's trying to not acknowledge Red as the point man, because for whatever reason he knows that is his kryptonite to his story.
Yeah,
that Red is the kryptonite. And if he acknowledged that Red was the point man, then he's acknowledging Red was the point man in Matt Bissonette's story.
What other operators or people that have a right to speak on this issue saw that? And I know there's the one other podcast, I can't think of the name of the podcast, with the Delta Force guy.
The Anti-Hero podcast.
Anti-Hero podcast. I mean, have they looked at this and seen the same thing that you just said?
Everybody that I've spoken to in the tier 1 community, Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force,
I wonder why then this video is not either on YouTube or on Rumble. I mean, it got 8,500 views. That's good for my show on Rumble, but it's not. I mean, I did a Las Vegas shooting in-depth analysis video that got 20,000. I've had other stuff that's got 40,000 on Rumble. I wonder why it hasn't gone viral. Like, honestly, why aren't these guys all looking at this saying, whoa, like he said something he's never said?
Well, I think partially because we didn't go after him. I think there was no antagonistic approach to it. So there is, if you look at the way the Anti-Hero podcast did their breakdown, without Rob being present in the conversation, but they broke down Rob's interview on the Sean Ryan on the Sean Ryan show, and basically called him a liar and said that everybody knows he didn't do it, and it's the best known secret that Rob O'Neill did not kill bin Laden. Very antagonistic, the way that they approached it.
It's better for show business, goes by.
Yeah. And I think that might be why, or it just timing. I don't know. Maybe this one does. But the reality is that when you watch the differences, and that's why I wanted to do this show, was to show in one video the differences in how he answers questions. And when presented with Red, the name Red as the point man, that was his response. And then now we're going to fast forward. We're going to let it play out to where they go upstairs and they take the shot. And we discuss the Amal part.
Okay. So Reds wasn't the point guy?
I'm not talking about anyone's names. I don't want to mention it. Those guys don't want to be associated at all, so I'm not going to even go down that path.
And I'd
recommend, and just to people, if they're listening who think they know, don't try to name people, because not everyone at SEAL Team 6 is as jovial as I am.
Oh, I get it, but please understand that the depth of knowledge of which I've been briefed, I'm aware of who he is.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to out anybody, but I also need to understand the complexities of the story, which have the point man, we'll call him, and we're not going to name names. I'm not going to drop a name on this podcast, because I do respect that part, but I do know his name. If you want, I can text you it and you can verify it or not. But
trust you.
I'm trying to understand as an operator, and where people who have told me what their recollection of what occurred and what the after action reports initially said, that those rounds that were fired, and even and again, you're not going to confirm Matt Bissonet's story, I get that, but in his version of the story, Reds, or the point guy, fires a couple rounds up the stairs at a figure that pops his head out, and that head goes back into the whatever room from the top of the stairs. And when he comes in, Osama bin Laden's on the ground with bullet holes in him. They then pump more into him and a couple other people as they come in. And that's kind of his version of the story. So my question is, between the two stories, and again, that's where I'm coming from as an investigator, when I'm contrasting two different versions of the same event, where is the gap? And the gap is in those rounds being fired, and what happened to those rounds?
Well, the gap is, I didn't see the shots fired. The gap is when I followed the point man up the stairs and turned, bin Laden was standing on 2 feet and he wasn't hit. And he had his hands on Amal's shoulders. And when I shot him, he was standing. I shot him again on the ground. And then the gap is the point man and I were in the room for a considerable amount of time before more guys came in. That could be where their confusion is. Maybe they thought they were a different stack, but there were 2 guys up there before them. All I know is Osama bin Laden was standing on 2 feet and Amal bin Laden had been shot. I didn't shoot her.
Okay. So, had you ever mentioned Amal being shot? I mean, I've heard that as well.
I may have.
Different versions of the story. But had you ever? Okay.
It's in her book, it's in her papers, and it's in sort of the after action.
One thing that we can also point out is the Amal part, where, again, I've listened to, I think, just about every interview, and I had not heard him say that until the Sean Ryan show. And I might have missed one or two. Yeah. But it's not a prevalent part of his story. You get into questioning him, and we don't have to share that part, because I know we have limited time at this, so I want to make sure we get the key points. But you had mentioned she was shot. Was she standing upright? She must have been a tough chick. Like, think about the fact that if she was shot and he was standing behind her and she was standing in front of him, they were both upright, that she's standing with a leg wound from a 5.56 round, which is a very brutal round to be shot with. It creates a lot of damage. And the fact that she's just standing there very nonchalantly. And her story actually is, he kind of said it
he said in her book.
And there's no book, not one that I've ever found. her statements don't state that Rob O'Neill came in and shot my husband or shot Osama bin Laden. Her statement was that a group of SEALs came in, she rushed them, was shot, and laid there, played dead. And when she woke up, her husband was dead. That's her version of the story. That was reported in some Indian newspaper, I think it was, or maybe it was a Pakistani newspaper. Okay. Anyways, the realities is that his version of how that all went down between the red switcheroo, the appointment switcheroo, the Amal being shot, the how he mentioned it in our story versus other stories, was in defensive mode, not in offering it. The Amal was shot was a more in a defensive way of saying, I didn't shoot her. He was very clear on, I didn't shoot her.
Did you notice earlier in this interview today, when we showed the earlier scenes of Rob describing it, this may have been just him misspeaking. I mean, I misspeak sometimes, or it could be that this is another flaw in the story. He said, when I first saw bin Laden, he was standing in front of them all.
Yeah, he did say in front of, yep.
In front. So that could be just misspeaking, because other interviews he's just behind with hands on her shoulder. Later in this interview, he said hands on her shoulders, which it's not going to be in front of him doing this.
Right. I'll give Rob the benefit of the doubt, just because the consistency wise, he's pretty much said the same thing every single time.
Sure. Okay.
That could just be a misspeak. I don't want to crush him on that one. All the other stuff was blatant, called him in lies. But go to the 1 hour mark in our video.
I mean, there's okay. I have an email. Again, I don't want to mention his name, but you have. But I got an email shortly after the raid asking me what happened in the room because he didn't know. So that's. I mean, I'll get you that email if you want. That'll be interesting. But I hate to go down the path of.
That was what?
Matt Bissonette he's referring to.
Okay, right.
I don't want to talk shit because everyone's a hero. And everyone did a great job. And I've worked with all these guys a lot, and they're all really, really good guys. I would wake up and go to work with these guys and be happy because I could go to a place and work with people who were better than me. So I don't want to do a he said, she said bullshit. I'm telling you what I saw. And I mean, I'm going to die with the truth. And God is my witness, bin Laden was standing on both.
Yeah, he's good. The guy's talented.
Yeah.
He knows how to work a room. He understands how to get in and out of shit.
I've got a quick question for you, Rob, as I'm, piecing this together, and both of you guys have studied this a lot more than me. Matt studied, Rob, you were there. Two different things. When you're talking about Amal, even major news sources have said she was on the ground, she was shot. I've never really heard you say whether you shot her or not, but that's the first time I've ever heard you say, and it sounded to me as if you said, you're talking about that gap, that she was shot when you first looked up and you said, there's Osama bin Laden. And she had been.
Well, I mean, I didn't see her get shot either. I saw her shot when I got in there.
But she was standing because you said he had his hands on.
He had his hands on her. Yeah.
Okay.
She wasn't on the ground. I put her on the bed.
Tough chick.
So I think yeah.
When the debriefing was going on and you offered your portion of that, what happened, that it was never mentioned that you killed Usama bin Laden in that recorded debrief. Do you recall that at all?
I recall the recorded debrief, and I know shit. When we got done recording it, I said to myself, I'm immediately going to regret this. But we do our best at cleaning up debriefs to avoid. We don't know what's going to happen on a mission this big, and we don't know if people threw errant shots brought up ever, and that's it. And so we're going to make it sound nice and clean, and that's what they're going to take. So it's not like I didn't. The way we said is that the two of us went up and we talked about the two of us doing it. I think the phrase "circling the drain" was used, and that did happen. I don't regret that. I mean, I thought I would regret it because I don't know. I didn't know what it was capable of, but I knew my guys weren't going to get reprimanded for anything they did. Everything went by the book.
Okay. I mean, and thank you for at least validating my information, which I'm trying to make sure that.
Well, I gotta be honest, man. You definitely have good sources. I'm impressed.
So we had some glitches there. I want to make sure that I heard what I heard. So on the one hand, Rob, you were saying that in the final debrief.
So one thing why that's important is because at that debrief, that the first debrief is basically just the team guys, just the guys that were there. And I've spoken to many where the fuck did I grow up? Spoken to many guys about when they're on a mission, they get done a mission, the debrief that happens just between the team guys, not command level guys, admirals and shit like that, but just the guys on the ground. What happens in that debrief? And the answer was, that's where we tell everything. That's how we get better. We say what we did. Each of us tells our part so that we can learn and grow from it, but also then know what the next version needs to look like.
Yeah.
So his version, his answer is basically saying that debrief is the second version, the cleaned up version, which it's not. Okay. The one where he was recorded was the one where everybody tells their story on what they did on the mission, and he did not say that he killed bin Laden. And that's a very important piece of this puzzle that no one's ever asked about.
Yeah. So where do you want to go now?
Let's go back. Let's look at that other video. That guy, okay.
This is the 1 hour 47 minute.
Your man?
Yeah, my guy took a shot up the stairs.
Got it.
Yeah, and I don't. That's for him to tell his story.
Of course.
Okay, stop there.
Complete back.
That's him. That's his deflection again for Reds. Is that the point man? Red took a shot up the stairs, but that's his story to tell. Go ahead.
Okay.
He sees people moving, and I want more guys, and he starts pimping me now. He doesn't know it's me. He knows it's one of his guys. He's like, we got to go. Come on. We got to go. Because what he's saying is, that's the suicide bombers. But we can beat them, but we have to go now. And this is my side of the story, but I'm pretty sure what he said was, hey man, these bitches is getting truculent.
Truculent.
I enjoy humor. This is my last joke of my life. Before I squeeze him, I whispered in his ear, I don't think that word means what you think it means. And then I squeeze him, and it's on. So we go up the stairs, and what there is at the top of the stairs, there's a curtain, not a door. It's like a shower curtain, but it's green. So you can't see through it. You can sort of see under it. So he moves the curtain, and there's two people standing there that he thought were suicide bombers. So he jumped on them. How this guy doesn't have a Medal of Honor, I don't know, because he jumped on the grenade. He's absorbing the blast for me.
Got it.
So because I said how simple it is, if you go this way, I'm going that way. Because he went here, I went here, and there's Usama bin Laden. And he's standing up. He's got his hands on his wife Amal's shoulders. I'm closer to him than we are right now. And the way my brain worked was, he's taller than I thought. He's a lot skinnier than I thought he would be. His beard's got some gray in it. That's his nose. That's his face. He's maneuvering. He's not surrendering. He's a threat. He's a suicide. And I shot him. So I shot him twice in the face over Amal's shoulder, and I shot him again as I'm moving Amal. So he's down here now, and I can hear him exhaling. He's dead. I mean, I know what it's like, and it's, I don't give a fuck who you are. I just killed a guy in front of his family. I moved his kid. I pushed them back, so I'm moving them out of the way because I know other SEALs are going to be coming in, and we're the good guys. I don't want them getting hurt. As I do, other Navy SEALs now in the room, and I'm sort of standing there. And I know I've been at war a lot, but now I'm having a moment. And one of my guys comes. I'm just standing. My guy comes up to me, the same guy that was in the van, the joke, and he goes, "You okay?" And I said, "No. What do we do now?" And he said, "Now we find the computers. We do this every night. You've done this hundreds of times." And I said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm back." And he goes, "Yeah, you just killed Osama bin Laden. Your life should change. Get to fucking work."
All right, hit pause. All right. It's really important to point out another inconsistency, and where, if you remember just a few minutes ago in his version to us, when discussing who shot Amal, and he's like, "Well, we were in there for a considerable amount of time, me and the point man." He said that right in our considerable amount of time. In that one, and in every other one that I've seen where he gets into detail about that, it's immediately or shortly thereafter, more SEALs in a room. That one, he moved Amal and the kid to the bed, and by that time, other SEALs in a room, and he's being told that he just killed bin Laden, and he had this moment of humanity. Like, it's almost all at the same time, which is more realistic in the way those types of things work. You're never, when there's gunfire, going to be alone for very long. Someone's going to want to be up where the gunfire is at. So,
right.
The fact that Rob was so inconsistent during our interview is an attribute to you and I being able to put him in a position where he had to feel that way, that he needed to change his story, that he needed to come up with an alternative answer that he'd never given before.
Yeah.
And the fact that we did it without being antagonistic to him.
Well, that's why he came back on 2 more times. I mean, that's the only reason.
Well, he came on 2 more times because he wanted to try to win us over.
Yeah.
He didn't want us to take his mistakes, his inconsistencies, and then use that against him.
Right. And I think after that second interview, he felt a lot better because we were talking about other issues that had nothing to do with his time.
I hope everybody understands or can see, based on our description of what happened in our interview and other interviews, the differences and how, when put under duress, his story changes. Whereas in no other interview that I've ever seen was Rob O'Neill ever put in any position other than being fanned with the fanboy fan.
Yeah. Well, his story changes and he gets a major case of acid reflux.
Yes.
I mean, that's obvious, dude. Yeah. And it happened in that third interview too. I think the third interview, for those who are interested in Extortion 17 and some of the others, super interesting, really, really cool interview. But I'll tell you, other people that were involved with Extortion 17 that know Rob and know me personally have called me to tell me they absolutely do not believe Rob's story. And to me, I respect you, Matt, but you're one guy that studied this issue. You could be wrong, whatever. Obviously, you're bringing up things that are factual in terms of contradictions, but there's a multitude of people now who have reached a high level in the military that have told me directly he's not telling the truth on this. So that leads me to my first question. Is this ever going to reach a boiling point or a tipping point where it's proven that where he can no longer get away with this? And where's this going for Rob? Like, how do you see this whole vehicle moving forward?
Well, there's yes, I think it ends. I think there is a whether it's an end, whether something big enough comes out and they just stop putting Rob out front, and he just goes off the pasture quietly into the night, or the whole lid blows off the entire corrupt world of Navy SEALs. One of those two things is going to happen. I do believe that's going to happen.
Well,
and
there
then
could be a
secondly,
lot of people that have, say, 30,000 views, maybe 100,000 views here and there on a short clip or whatever. But I mean, would it take finally like a Tucker Carlson or somebody almost at that level to say like, hey, I'm now part of the alt media, I might as well dig into this. They look at it like, damn. And they do a show on it at that point, exposing the same thing you're exposing here. And it gets, I'm asking, will it take that level to get this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's either going to take the whole deck of cards falling around the SEAL community with all the other things that have gone on for Rob to be caught up into that. And the overall assumption that if one's bad, they're all bad is kind of the way that's going to end up playing if it goes that route. Or it's going to take someone like a Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan to be like, listen, I've got too many people telling me the difference, and they do a story and they do enough to where the populace goes, the guy's a liar and he's not telling the truth about what happened on that day. And he gets put to pasture and never to be heard from again. I don't think Rob ever comes out and goes, you're right, I lied, I didn't kill him. I don't think that's
he'd probably go silently into the night. The only way I think that the third thing happens, which is what you just said, if he were to own it and say, yeah, I lied, would be if Reds actually came out of the closet and told his truth. Right?
Yeah. Well, based on his current employment, that's not happening anytime soon. So
what's his current employment?
Let's just say he's for one of the 3-letter agencies.
Okay.
And he's not coming out. So,
Wow. Not surprising entirely. Well, as always, Matt, even though these are hard topics, I always say, hey, we got 15 minutes left. We end up going for almost 40. So I enjoy the conversation, man. And thank you for continuing to expose with the light of truth. And I wish you continued success as it comes to Job and your fight to expose what really happened in your friend's life, which everybody can click the link in the description for the SEALs secrets, and you go over that story entirely. It's fascinating.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate always having the platform to share and to spend time with you.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, thanks again. I'll talk to you soon, brother.